Yeah, so clearly there are a lot of macroeconomic challenges in Burundi at the moment. So, for example, inflation increasing over the past couple of years. More importantly, I think, as a longer-term challenge, the difficulty of exchanging local currency for US dollars and other trade currencies makes it incredibly difficult to do business in Burundi, particularly when it comes to encouraging foreign direct investment, when it comes to encouraging the exports, which Burundi can really be taking advantage of, but also when it comes to imports. Burundi's a net importer of food. More imports from countries across Africa and indeed the rest of the world means lower prices and more abundant available food for Burundians. So if we want to talk about increasing trade in Burundi, we want to talk about increasing foreign direct investment, the first thing that often comes on that journey is making sure that the macroeconomic situation is stable, and that means, you know, sound money, ease of exchange for foreign currencies, and also making sure that the public finances are in good hands. So you might have seen before what a lot of economists call the hockey stick. And it's a chart of the growth of Great Britain's economy throughout history. And for most of human history, very low, very poor, almost nothing. And then all of a sudden, something miraculous happens in the early 19th century. And everything starts to go up. And we see this in almost every country in Europe, we'll see it in the United States, in China over recent years. Just most of human history is poverty, and then massive increases in living standards, life expectancy, quality of life, everything you could want. And a lot of that has to do with free trade. When you trade freely, it means that you can bring in goods from other countries, which means cheaper and more available products. I talked about Burundi being a net importer of food, so in that case, more cheap and abundant food for Burundians. But it also means that here at home, you can specialise in what you are best at. So, for example, Burundi is a very agricultural country, right? And it's got agricultural exports that are very in demand across particularly East Africa, but indeed further afield as well. And it means that there's more money available for investment in improving the efficiency and specialisation of agriculture here in Burundi. But also there are a great many opportunities for Burundi going forward. You have a lot of gold, for example, which is increasingly in demand in an unstable world. You have mineral deposits and potentially even petroleum, looking to exploit and explore. And getting the investment in to explore those resources is crucial, but then being able to export them easily as well is absolutely key to improving Burundi's economy in the long run. So the first one is the kind of the boring old explanation, which is just tariffs, right? When you impose a tariff, you make the cost of importing much more expensive, and that cost that you impose through a tariff is passed on to Burundian consumers. So it's not really the people who are trying to import things to Burundi who are paying the cost of that. No, it's Burundian consumers who pay the cost through products that aren't here, that otherwise might be here, and also higher prices. So that's one thing. But the far more important thing in any modern trade discussion, not just in Burundi or Africa, but across the world, is non-tariff barriers to trade. So it's just, for example, the difficulty of perhaps bringing something through the airport, like how stringent are the checks that need to take place, how complicated are the rules for getting permits and bringing things into Burundi, and then there are also the things that might not seem related to trade that very much are. So we talked about the macroeconomic situation that needs to be kind of fixed in lots of countries, where if it is difficult to exchange local currency for dollars, which is the world's global reserve currency and what so many global industries actually trade in, US dollars, then that's just an added cost, which makes, whether it's coming here to invest in Burundian industry and help with exports, or whether it's importing, it just makes the cost of doing business in Burundi much higher. So there are the classic old problems with trade that have been around since forever, things like tariffs, getting tariffs down. fixing non-tariff barriers to trade so it's a much smoother process of doing business in Burundi, and then kind of smoothing over some of the seemingly unrelated but very important macroeconomic problems like currency exchange, which again just get that cost of doing business in Burundi down. And there are plenty of countries in Africa who have so much sort of potential when it comes to resources and people, most importantly, where the cost of doing business is just too high for lots of other businesses in Africa and across the world. And it is very much possible for Burundi to engage in these policy reforms which just give Burundi that competitive edge on other countries when it comes to doing business here. So no, when countries trade freely with one another, what you have when it comes to imports is much cheaper products. You have more competition. And more competition, whether that's between a Burundian company and a Nigerian company, or between a Burundian company and a Tanzanian company, as you've got much more of with the East African Free Trade Area, it means that those organisations are competing for a dollar from the consumer. And so the consumer chooses where that dollar goes. Am I going to buy X product or Y product? They generally don't really care where the product comes from. They want the best value for money. And that is, in short, what economic growth is. If you can do more with the resources you have, if you can produce more things for consumers with the same amount of resources, you've created economic growth. You've improved standards of living for Burundians. So I think it's important to kind of conceptualize trade as something that benefits consumers, because all of us are consumers. We all work in different industries, we all have different goals in life, but we all want to consume things. And what free trade does is basically it makes goods at the end point, that crucial end point, much cheaper for consumers, but also it does create high-paying jobs. Because as I said, if you've got a much broader area where free trade is taking place between different countries, that enables more economic specialisation. So you could say, oh, we want to do everything in Burundi, we want to make everything in Burundi. But that doesn't necessarily make sense, because there are some things that Burundian workers or the Burundian climate or the Burundian speaking English or speaking French might be better suited to. And so there's absolutely no reason why Burundians should fear products from other countries coming here, because it means that they are cheaper or of better quality, or basically just more suited to consumers' needs than what they might be getting already. And crucially, there may very well be more of it. So when we think about trade, we should think about consumers. Consumers benefit massively from free trade and liberalised barriers to trade, but also you could look forward to much more economic development on the production side as well, because it means that there's more foreign investment and also more capital built up in Burundi to invest in the production of the products that Burundi is best at producing. That means that each worker is more productive within, say, an hour or 15 minutes or a day of their time, because they have better equipment to use. And that means higher wages for Burundians. So it's a win-win for everyone. It's not to say that there would be zero disruption. That's not true. The point of free trade, the point of economic development is disruption. But if you have a strong rule of law, which is absolutely crucial, that protects people's private property, that treats everybody equally as far as possible, and that ensures that contracts are agreed to and they are fulfilled, then yes, you'll have some economic disruption, but at the end of it, you'll be much better off. Everyone is better off when we trade freely. So I'm a big believer that ideas are extremely powerful, and we are on right now by far the youngest continent in the world. In fact, we're in one of the youngest countries on the youngest continent in the world. And Burundian change makers will be the upcoming generation. They're much more entrepreneurial than the generation that preceded them. They, in many cases, are much more economically active. They're more sort of keen to search for economic opportunities. And that's a really exciting thing. Because fundamentally, if people want to seek economic opportunity, they want to make a better life for themselves and their families, there's very little that anybody can really do to stop them. And so what the question that I or anyone should ask Burundians is, do we want cheaper food, better economic development? Do we want more integration with the rest of the world? Do we want more economic opportunities for people outside Burundi, in Burundi, to be creating prosperity here, but also people in Burundi here and across Africa? If the answer is yes, then free trade is absolutely key. And I believe, and I hope it's certainly true, that the answer for everybody in Burundi to those questions is a resounding yes.